Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Schall, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Howard Beck, formerly of the New York Times, currently of GQ Sports, to talk about the Knicks' past, present, and future, and their chances of closing out the Cleveland Cavaliers, Donovan Mitchell trade redux, and some thoughts on whether the Knicks are going to get a star this offseason. All that and more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. And I wanted to remind you to download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today. And every day, because that would make you an everydayer. And we love our everydayers here at the Locked On Podcast Network. If you're not already, please remember to subscribe on YouTube and hit that notifications bell so you never, ever miss an episode. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. I almost forgot at that time. You know, without Alex here to remind me, it gets a little tougher. But we do have a great substitute today. It's Howard Beck, a guy who, if you're like me and you grew up in the New York area, you grew up reading his Knicks coverage. Maybe you grew up in Los Angeles and you grew up reading his coverage of Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, or you saw him as a national reporter either for Bleacher Report, Sports Illustrated, or most recently for GQ Sports, or you're a big fan of a little post like I am and you hear him there all the time. Whatever it is, I'm excited to officially say, what up, Beck? And welcome in one of my favorite NBA reporters to talk Knicks right now on Locked On Knicks. All right, as promised, I throw this word out sometimes, but I can promise it has a little bit of a deeper meaning this time. Honored to be joined by Howard Beck, currently an NBA reporter for GQ Sports, and wow, this is cool, a contributor at the Locked On Sports Network. So Howard, appreciate you joining me. I'm excited to talk some Knicks with you.
Honored to be here, Gavin. And I don't use the word lightly either. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I had to resist the urge to go, what up, Beck? I feel like you've probably been getting it all day. You get it every show you're on. I didn't want to overdo it. But what I do want to overdo is praise of the New York Knicks, up 3-1 now over the Cleveland Cavaliers. You covered the Knicks when they, I believe, not nearly this good. I don't know. Did you get 12-13 or did you just miss that?
No, it's funny. 12-13 was the year that because the Nets had been moved, or the Nets had made their move to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And so Brooklyn had a team for the first time in a half century. And my editors at the New York Times, where I was at the time, said, hey, this is a big moment. Why don't you go cover the Nets? You've been on the Knicks for 8 years. Go do the Nets this season. I said, all right, cool. Yeah, I'll go do that. And then we got about 4 months into the season of the Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, Brooke Lopez experience. The novelty had worn off. The buzz had subsided. They were good, but bland. And like, there wasn't any real energy there. And the Knicks, of course, unexpectedly that year had just taken off. Right. And they were on their way to what I believe ended up being a 54-win season.
Sounds right.
And so they moved me back to the Knicks. Here was the cool thing though. So they moved me back to the Knicks, and I think it was late January, early February of that season. And it was just, maybe it was mid-February, but it was just in time for literally my first game back was that night that Steph Curry went off. And it was like that, this defining Steph Curry moment. He hit like 13 threes or whatever it was. And I think the Knicks won in overtime. So it was just funny, the timing there. Cause I got to see history in the early part of Steph's kind of coming out party. And then of course, I stuck with the Knicks the rest of that season. And of course they went to the second round. That's the Roy Hibbert block on Carmelo Anthony. And I even bringing up that painful memory for Knicks fans, I use it as a marker though, is that that was the last time, not only that the Knicks were like a really important playoff team, but like the last time that the Garden, I felt like really rocked in the postseason. 2 years ago, when they get back to the playoffs against the Hawks, that was still coming out of COVID. So there were still limits on the crowd. I didn't go to those games. So I tweeted this the other night when I was at game 3, that it was the first playoff game I'd been at the Garden since 2013, which is hard to believe. It's 10 years. But, very different kind of Knicks team this time. But the Garden vibe was like, it's incredible. It's still there. And And by the way, we'll get into this, but like it absolutely had an impact on the series and on the Cavaliers because it was nuts in there.
Maybe that's your answer to this first question then. And it's cool because there does feel like there's some shared DNA between this team and the 12-13 team in that both are maybe more than the sum of their parts. The key difference is this feels sustainable. And that team was like a 42-year-old Jason Kidd. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Maybe a 50-year-old Kurt Thomas in there. And it didn't. It was like, all right, this is one year only. And it turned out to really be only 1 year only for a decade. And now the Knicks are really young and really good. So Howard, what's impressed you the most about the Knicks run up to this point?
Yeah, no, a couple differences, by the way, before I answer that. So, the first thing I was thinking about was like, well, they don't have a player like Carmelo Anthony, right? Like Carmelo's a Hall of Famer and, top 10 scorer of all time in NBA history. And this team doesn't have anybody who looks like they're going to ever chart out at Jalen Brunson's been amazing, but I think it's too soon to start talking about a potential Hall of Fame career. Julius Randle, probably not. So the top end talent for that Knicks team was a difference, but yeah, to your point, like I never thought it was sustainable as it was happening, and that was a very controversial stance at the time, and Knicks fans were not very happy with me for saying it. But there was a lot of age on that team and a lot of miles, and there was a certain just kind of serendipity with that team, right? Like J.R. Smith had his best season. A bunch of guys played way beyond their resumes, and then they kind of they regressed to the mean the following season. Chris Copeland, yeah.
Ultimate example of that, but yeah, go ahead.
Steve Novak, even like, the whole, Kid, Prigioni, who's the third guard in that? There were 3 point guards in that. Raymond Felton. But so there was we don't need to do a whole review of 2012-13, but like there was a bunch of different things.
We'll do it. I'm happy to talk about that team forever.
Sure. Like a fun off-season project, right? Like reflecting on given seasons. But there were a bunch of guys who had breakout seasons or played way above their head, and then there were all the guys, Rashid, Kurt Thomas, Marcus Camby, who were all at the very end and who were just breaking down along the way. Plus there was just the fact that Amari Stoudemire got hurt. Mike Woodson would have never gone with the Carmelo at the 4. Carmelo didn't want to play the 4. A bunch of stuff had to happen for that season to happen, and some of it was just happenstance. I've just used the word happen way too many times in a sentence. So there was a serendipity there. This team that is up 3-1 on the Cavs right now and looking very much like a team that's ready to get to the second round and see if they can make some noise. And would be, again, the first team to make the second round for the Knicks since 2013. This team is young. It's at more of their starting point. They've already far exceeded expectations. If you go back, I don't remember what the predictions were preseason from Vegas or wherever else, but what were they?
It was about 39 wins.
Yeah. I was going to say 37, 38, but yeah, 39, like a good season would have been getting to 500 and being in the play-in or something. And instead they're, a really strong 5th seed that's on the verge of upsetting. And I use that term lightly because 5-4s aren't really upsets in the NBA, but they're on the verge of taking this series against a team that has higher top end talent, right? Against a team that has a guy that they were pursuing pretty aggressively last summer, Donovan Mitchell, and who has not exactly shown up at that level in this series since game 1. So like, this is like every single part of this is just a thrill and exceeding expectations for the Knicks and their fans, because I don't think even the most optimistic Knicks fan could have seen this coming, that through 4 games in this series, Jalen Brunson has probably been the best guard in this series. Jalen Brunson, who has not been an all-star, going up against a backcourt of 2 established all-stars. He has been the most consistent player in this series. And a lot has, we'll get into it, but a lot is going in their way.
Do you see a response for Cleveland? Because there is, I think there are some Knicks fans that are very level-headed right now, and there are other ones who see this series as being over. And I don't think that's ridiculous, because it feels like the Cavs were forced to kind of make their all-in move very early, right? Starting Karis LeVert, and now they've shuffled through different lineups, different permutations. And to be clear, like, their original starting lineup with Isaac Okoro still plus 13 per 100 possessions over the course of the series. They have lineups that work. It just feels like they can't get to those lineups enough because they're only composed of the same 5 or 6 guys, and you have to play a couple other guys. And every time they play those few other guys, they get destroyed. So do you think going back home, like maybe the pivot is just that Donovan Mitchell scores 45 points a game for the rest of the series, which he's totally capable of doing. But do you think there's a chance Cleveland can come back, or do you feel pretty good about the Knicks having this wrapped up? All right, guys, we'll be back with Howard in just a sec to talk through if the Cavs still have a chance, and also what the Knicks' ceiling is if they win this series, plus some thoughts on Donovan Mitchell in the trade that didn't happen. But first, if you want to go watch the Knicks in person, there's only one option, and that is Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite sporting event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you, with killer deals on last-second tickets and their best price guaranteed. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun that you'll have. I know I'm looking at Game 6 at MSG, and I know it's bad energy for me to be putting out there. Hopefully, the Knicks close it out in Cleveland, but if they don't, I kind of want to go to a game. I want to see the Knicks get a win. So I'm looking at Gametime for that. And there's a reason it's the best option for you, and it's the place for last minute tickets, because you don't have to plan months in advance. They have tickets right up to the day of event, and they have these incredible flash deals that come with a Gametime guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, guys, before we come back, I also want to talk to you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Grand Slam no-hitters and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. I know that I'm looking at Knicks-Cavs Game 6. I'm going to throw a little bit of money down on the Knicks. I think they have what it takes to close the series out, and they kind of have Cleveland figured out. Hopefully I'm right. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League.
My guess is that the Cavs win Game 5, right? Like that's the natural order of things in an NBA series, right? Unless a team is just coming apart at the seams, your back's against the wall, you're facing elimination, and you're at home. You've got a good home crowd. You've been a good home team all season. You do have stars who are capable of rising to the occasion. Like I would expect the Cavs to win, not due to any doubt about the Knicks, but just more like I think the Cavs have underachieved the last couple of games. And I think, listen, if you saw their body language and just their facial expressions, their lack of aggression, everything about, especially in Game 3, a little less so in Game 4, they were shell-shocked. Like the atmosphere absolutely got to them. Like everybody was at the Garden Friday night for Game 3. Should give themselves a little bit of credit. Like they like it doesn't always happen. We sometimes overestimate crowds and stuff, but the home court advantage, especially in the playoffs and an atmosphere like the Garden has, is a very real thing. And this is a young team. This is Darius Garland's first playoff series. This is Evan Mobley's first playoff series. And I don't think it's coincidence that you see them suddenly shots are short or suddenly they're a little tentative, which they certainly were. Donovan Mitchell's got a ton of playoff experience, of course, but then even there are other guys that they're leaning on a lot. Jared Allen and Karis LeVert played a couple of playoff series in Brooklyn once upon a time in series with no stakes, where they were not favorites, where they were just this, plucky underdog. This is different. And they just do not look to be up to the moment right now. So they'll feel more confident going home. They'll be better. We know the talent is there. And Donovan Mitchell, he had his best game of the series in Game 1 at home. I think there's a little bit too of like from the moment they traded for Mitchell, and you're now trying to create this backcourt where Darius Garland had a breakthrough year as an all-star just one season ago. He just had become, a serious player. And now he's having to share the backcourt with Donovan Mitchell. I'm not saying this is like one of those, power struggle kind of things where it's jockeying for who has control of the offense, but there is something to comfort level. And where if you are a guy who is very comfortable with the ball in your hands as primary creator and scorer, and now you're sharing that burden, it's one thing to try to figure out that dynamic in the regular season and how to share the load, how to play off of each other. It's another thing to do it in the playoffs, especially when a team is coming at you as hard as the Knicks are. And the Knicks have cranked up their defense by like 17 notches, almost literally. They were not a great defensive team in the regular season. They have been in this one, in this series. And I think it's just throwing them off. And my guess would be that Donovan Mitchell, as the guy with the most postseason experience and the just the resume and the responsibility, I think we see a big Donovan Mitchell game in Game 5, and they win that and push it back to the Garden, and then we'll see if they can figure out how to win a game at the Garden. But my guess is Cavs win Game 5, Knicks win Game 6, and close it out.
Yeah, I think it's a great point on the home crowd, because you saw in Game 2, the Knicks were the ones that were rattled, right? When Darius Garland had that big punch, was making shot after shot, and it didn't feel like they had that turbo boost from anywhere to respond to it. And then started the third quarter, Brunson just is really struggling to get around screens. Garland's doing whatever he wants in like a two-man game, either with Jared Allen or Evan Mobley. And then it felt like the crowd like gave the Knicks that extra boost. And you see guys playing, I don't want to say over their heads, because I think they all have it within them, but like Mitchell Robinson, what he's doing defensively is like the level of focus and precision, and his ability to guard two in the pick and roll and take away the pass and take away the shot is just incredible. And someone like RJ Barrett, it's a big credit to him, right? Because that can go wrong a little bit with a home crowd, particularly with someone like RJ, who seems to have just like a borderline, like pathological amount of confidence. He could be like, all right, I'm going to come out and shoot 12 threes today because I'm feeling that good. And instead he's like ridden that energy, but in a very measured way. And then to your point on Mitchell and Garland, like I think that's one of the strengths of this Knicks team, is that there's a very clear-cut pecking order. And you see it all the time in the NBA, where teams can kind of overachieve their talent level because everyone really knows their role. And the Knicks don't play any bad players, but simultaneously, I mean, it was an issue with RJ in the season where he would try to do too much. No one on this Knicks team tries to do too much. And maybe Julius Randle not quite being himself, maybe not 100% healthy, according to Tom Thibodeau, clarifies that even an extra step for the Knicks. But I think that's been to their advantage in this series. But you mentioned Donovan Mitchell. I think you're aware. I think everyone listening is aware. The Knicks were pretty interested in trying to trade for him this past summer. And you can't help but fall in love with the narrative a little bit. I don't think anyone in New York wants to talk about Donovan Mitchell right now, at least in the context of him having or theoretically being a Knick in this series. But how do you feel about that a year later? Because I kind of think no matter how you look at it, that's a pivot point for the Knicks as a franchise, deciding not to get him. And a lot of the guys that would have been that trade, I mean, Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickley aren't doing that much in this series. RJ Barrett's doing a whole lot. Obi Toppin's doing a whole lot. And you almost can't see this Knicks team without them. Or you could look at it the opposite way and say, like, no one would have anticipated Jalen Brunson being this good. Like, what could him and Mitchell have done together?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if Mitchell's there, I don't know if this Jalen Brunson emerges, right? Yeah. Like the reason this Jalen Brunson emerges, and maybe a lot of the reason, other than all of his family ties and everything else, that he comes to New York, is because there's a limit to how much you can do as a ball handling playmaker scorer type when you're playing with one of the greats to ever do it in Luka in Dallas. Like there's a limit on you. And so Jalen Brunson arguably just needed the oxygen that he was going to get as the undisputed primary playmaker, ball handler, leader of the offense in New York. He was exactly what the Knicks needed. He has far exceeded expectations. Like, did the Knicks even know he could be like, I'm sure his dad would say yes, but like, I don't like in the limited amount of time that a player gets, as he did with Dallas, to be the guy. All right, Luka's out for a week, so go see what you can do. Oh, that was eye-opening. But doing that every night for an 82-game season and taking on the extra burden and the leadership and everything that comes with it, not everybody's built for that. And you don't know until a guy actually does it. Jalen Brunson has been just absolutely essential to the Knicks, but as I say, far exceeded expectations. I don't think anybody in the league saw this version of him coming. Where every year now we're going to be talking about him as, either all-star or potential all-star. I don't think he's going to have made all NBA this year. The guard glut was just staggering. Yeah. But that he was even in consideration is saying, a lot about him. If you get Donovan Mitchell, he doesn't have that opportunity. Then they're trying to figure out the thing that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are, frankly. And, when the Knicks quote unquote, failed to get Donovan Mitchell, lost out on the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes, I thought it was fine because I like Donovan Mitchell a lot. He's a really great player, but he was not the guy who was going to take the Knicks from, lottery team to title contention. And even if you assumed that Jalen Brunson was going to be really good when they got him, I didn't think that combination was going to be ideal. And I still didn't think that was going to be enough. Donovan Mitchell does not single-handedly change your team. The Cavaliers made more sense for him. They have obviously this already a great defense and a great back line so that you can make up for the fact that you've got this undersized backcourt. I just thought they were better suited to kind of integrate him. And even as I say that, I think part of the Cavs' issues in this series are, and you said it, Gavin, you need a pecking order, and you need to know exactly what it is. Now, sometimes that pecking order means you have two absolute studs leading you, a LeBron and Dwayne Wade combination, or a Kobe and Shaq, or whatever you may, whichever combination you want to point to. But especially when it's two ball handling guards, two primary ball handlers, it takes time. And they've never been in this situation before. They've never been in the playoffs before. And, even this season, like there were some long stretches where one or the other was out. I just think that part of this is, all right, like things have gotten a little off track here. We just need a bucket right now, or we need to win the next 5 minutes. Who are we riding? And maybe they don't know the answer to that question yet. The other thing I'll say is this: coming into the series, and I did, full admission here. Like I picked Cavs in 6.
I did too, if that helps. So.
Okay, so there we go. And it was because I leaned that direction just slightly. They've got home court advantage. They were slightly better in the regular season. They were I think they were the number 1 rated defense in the regular season. And they had the better, I would say, top end talent, right? Mm-hmm. The Cavs, that foursome is great. And then the drop off starts with their starting small forward and it just continues through the bench. And I thought, but the Knicks have the advantage on depth. So that was the division I saw in my head. Cavs, better top end, Knicks, better overall depth. The Cavs top end talent hasn't delivered as they need to make that actually matter. And, on top of that, the drop off is just staggering, right? You mentioned them swapping out Okoro for Karis LeVert, who's this very all or nothing player. And, they just look at their bench, there's just nowhere to go. And so you start looking at X factors and RJ Barrett, who, on any given night, you're not sure what you're going to get from RJ Barrett over the course of the last couple of years, but he's having all of a sudden he's busting out in a way that all right, the Cavs have no match for that. If he's playing at that level, who do they got? Who's going to do that? Their stars aren't even performing at that level right now. So, I just think, a lot of what was structurally wrong with the Cavaliers this season, everybody knew from day one, they need a better small forward to go with those 4 stars. They need a better bench, and yet they let Kevin Love walk in the middle of the season. And so they're playing at a little bit of a deficit overall, I feel like, with their rotation.
All right, guys, we will be back with Howard one final time to tell you about the Knicks' future. Are they content with what they currently have? How impressed he is with how Leon Rose has built this current team? And could they swing a star trade this summer? All that and more in just a sec. But first, I got to tell you something new about PrizePicks. They have a $1 million daily super flex promotion during the NBA playoff/finals. So what does that mean for you guys? Every day of the NBA playoff/finals, one PrizePicks users will win a chance at becoming a millionaire. One entry placed after 8 a.m. EST will be randomly selected each day. Whoever placed that entry will be given a 6-pick flex with the following payouts. If you get 6 picks correct, you get $1 million. If you get 5 picks right, you get $80,000. If you get 4 picks right, you get $16,000. So full details can be found at prizepicks.com/1million. You must opt in at this link to be eligible for the $1 million entry. Once you opt in, all you have to do is play the game like normal, and you could be the lucky winner. You could also play PrizePicks the regular old way, where you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. And the beauty of it is there's no competing against other people, just you versus the projections available. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. Safe and fast withdrawals and currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So all you have to do is download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. Deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, well, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code Locked On and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Yeah, the Love thing is stunning to me because he had, I think it was something like a 34-point game against the Knicks and in the lone Cavs win over the Knicks in the regular season this year and just tortured them. And it feels like that is what Cleveland is crying out for more than anything else. Just a third shooter on the floor around Mitchell and Garland is what the Knicks are doing. Like they're throwing 2 on the ball, whichever guard has the ball, and they're respecting the other guard off the ball. And then they're strong side help every single time. And they're saying, all right, Isaac Okoro, make a corner 3. And he's like 1 for 6, 1 for 7 this whole series. And then with Karis LeVert, it's like, all right, he'll make a couple, but then RJ Barrett's going to go right at him on the other end. And they don't have that either two-way wing or two-way power forward that could provide that answer. And look, Evan Mobley in 2 years, if he's a 35% three-point shooter on decent volume, I mean, this Cavs team is incredibly scary, but he is not there yet. And I think that's, to me, been the difference in this series. So, Howard, I guess having said that, I'm reticent to do this, but since I have you here, if we can look forward for the New York Knicks, Giannis, back injury, maybe back next game, maybe not. Miami, who the Knicks had their struggles with, but ultimately took the season series against, could potentially get out of that round. That feels like I'm getting ahead of myself, to be clear. I very much think Milwaukee's going to get out of the round. I think Giannis will probably be healthy, and I think that would probably be a 5, maybe 6 game series against the Knicks. But I got to ask you, what do you think the ceiling is of this Knicks team? As fun as it is right now, can Knicks fans hope for more?
It feels like a lot, and yet at the same time, like you can see it. Like somebody, I think Ian O'Connor, the great Ian O'Connor, tweeted this the other day about you can kind of start to see the path. Like it's a little too soon, but it's just as you said. Like Giannis is hurt, the Heat are up in that series. Suddenly, final sounds like a too tall a task. Let's not get crazy. It's a little early for that. And I still like the Celtics are probably the best team in the East and are the deepest. And yeah, they've messed around a little bit in that Hawks series, but the Celtics are really good. And the Bucks are really good. And Giannis, while we've been recording, I think Giannis is participating in the morning shoot around and is returning to the lineup in Game 4. So, there you go. I will see what he looks like. But if I'm going to start playing with fire here and making predictions on a Monday morning before a lot of games have happened and before the first round is anywhere near over.
Yeah.
I think the Bucks are coming back to win that series. I think the Bucks are way too much for the Knicks to handle in round 2. But if Giannis is not himself, or if Middleton's banged up again, because he's always banged up, or something listen, I mean, it's a funny way to look at this, but this is kind of like why it's sometimes better if you have the opportunity and you're trying to figure out which way to pivot, right? In the midst of a season, or sometimes even in the off season. The argument for being all in at all times, or always just playing to win, or not tanking, not letting go of the rope, not selling off pieces at midseason or whatever, is that sometimes things will break your way. I don't think anybody could have expected a few months ago that the Knicks would be in round 1, up 3-1 on a higher seed against a team that got the star that they missed out on, that has, again, arguably higher, top tier talent. It would be in a position to not only beat that team, but then to go to the second round against either a, really depleted and flawed Heat team or a possibly banged up Bucks team. And to suddenly, the next thing you know, you're talking about a plausible shot at making the conference finals. That's why you stay all in, because, hey, you never know what's going to happen. Give yourself the best possible chance. And so it's interesting just to look at it through that lens for a moment. I don't expect the Bucks to lose to the Heat in this series, and I don't expect the Knicks to upset the Bucks in the second round. But just getting there, making it a series, playing them tough, stealing a game or two from them, that would be more than a successful season for the Knicks, given what expectations were, and given that, look, they don't have the top end talent that some of these teams have. They don't have a Giannis. They don't have a Jason Tatum. They don't have a Joel Embiid. Like they're, I don't know where the ceiling is for this Knicks team. Maybe it's too soon for that discussion, but or maybe it's not. But they're, they have gotten more than the best they could out of this group.
I'm with you on that, and I can't help but ask that question. That maybe it's too early to ask.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Because when Leon Rose was brought in, seemingly the vision was the same as the vision has largely been the last 20 years. And granted, like there have been press conferences over the years. There've been of the 40 or so presidents the Knicks have had over the last 20 years, there've been guys who come and said, yeah, we got to build this the right way. We got to build through the draft. And it sometimes happens for a little bit, but it never really seems to last. And Leon Rose seemed like James Dolan's kind of like latest and biggest attempt at saying like, all right, but this is the guy, like the guy who ran CAA, who has like the connection to all these dudes. He's the guy who's actually going to bring in everyone, who's going to ensure that we don't miss on Durant, that we don't miss on Kyrie Irving. And instead, what Leon Rose has turned out to be is sort of Billy Bean, right? Like it's been like, all right, like we're going to nail like the 25th pick 2 times in a row. We're going to get Emmanuel quickly, a guy who maybe this playoff series where he's been missing in action puts a damper on it, but a guy the second half of this year looked like someone who could make a run at an all-star team next season. Quentin Grimes, who finished the last 20 or so games of the season, is like one of the 3 or 4 best high-volume three-point shooters in the NBA. They've developed Mitchell Robinson to one of the most impactful defenders in the league. Isaiah Hartenstein, bargain bin deal. There's been hardly any drop-off when he's on the floor in the series. They didn't give up on Julius Randle when everyone, myself included, loudly was begging them to give up on Julius Randle. Jalen Brunson, to your point, has been a revelation. Josh Hart, outside of Kevin Durant, pretty easily the most exciting midseason acquisition, and relative to the price, maybe the best midseason acquisition. Has completely transformed this Knicks team. I say all that to say, like Rose has done a fantastic job, but not necessarily how he was expected to do it. Do you think the goal, and I think I would personally say it still probably is to say like, all right, this is fun. This is maybe even a little bit more than cute in that you're talking about a team that could make an Eastern Conference Finals run like in a couple of years. Like the whole team, like they played 6 guys who were 25 or younger yesterday. That was with Grimes out and injured. The other guys are 26 and 27 in Brunson and Randall. Is this a team where you want to let that ride and say, what could all these guys be in 3-4 years? Or do you look at it and say like, all right, but we're going to have to pay Hart like $18-19 million a year. Quickly's, even with this series, is going to ask for probably over $20 million a year. Grimes, like 3-and-D wings are hard to find in the NBA. He's going to be worth a lot of money. Do you look at all that and say like, all right, maybe we need to make some kind of consolidation move and make that swing on kind of an A1, true blue, no doubter, all NBA type of star?
Well, the good news is, the Knicks have never been afraid of paying the luxury tax and have one of the biggest TV deals, in the league and all that stuff. So if they have to pay all those guys you just named, they probably will. I suspect it won't reach that point because, I suspect there's going to be some consolidation along the way. I thought I was going to give myself, a whiplash or a neck injury nodding as much as I was while you were going through this, Gavin, because the way you broke it down in the Leon Rose era is exactly how I've seen it. They brought in Leon and Wes because they saw, as Dolan always does, an opportunity to get guys who he thinks are going to get him stars, right? Oh, I'm going to get Isaiah Thomas because the stars like Isaiah. I'm going to get this guy. He always does this. And they've done the exact opposite. Like you nailed it with the Billy Bean thing. They have essentially struck out when it comes to going and getting the superstars that you thought they brought them in to get. It's been like 4 years since Leon and West came in. They haven't gotten those guys, but what they did do was they've gotten they've stuck with the guys they inherited, like Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson. I think they inherited RJ Barrett too, didn't they?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep,
so and then they've done just an incredible job around the edges, right? Like there were people who were, and I was not one of them, by the way. I was all for the Jalen Brunson investment, even if I didn't think he'd be this good. I was fine with the contract, but they were criticized for that contract, and understandably so. So they nailed Jalen Brunson. They nailed Quentin Grimes. They nail the Josh Hart trade. Like I love Josh Hart. So like that was just such I want to say sneaky good, but I think everybody in the NBA wouldn't have seen it as that sneaky. Everybody knows like this is a really good player. Shame on all the teams who didn't go get him because the Knicks didn't even have to give up much to acquire him. Think of the team they're playing in this series. Like that's got this massive hole at small forward. Like Josh Hart would be better than anybody they've had at the 3. I think they've done a really incredible job around the edges, whether it's second round picks, late firsts, free agent signings. They've gotten all the little stuff right. And in the past, the Knicks have, I won't say they've never gotten the little stuff right. I mean, we mentioned Chris Copeland earlier. That was one. That was a while ago. But there is a limit, right? There is a ceiling in this league. Talent is determinative. Eventually you need a Giannis or a Tatum or an Embiid, a LeBron, a Curry, a Kevin Durant. Like at some point you need that guy. And I don't think we can expect Jalen Brunson to reach those heights. Julius Randle, I don't think is going to reach those heights, even if he does end up on the All-NBA team again this year for the second time in 3 years. And after everybody, wrote him off last season. Julius Randle blew off the media after being benched down the stretch of yesterday's game. I don't know. I think there's still some concerning elements there. But is a Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle 1-2 punch enough to make you a perennial contender in the East? I'd say no. So you are either consolidating and getting that star, or whatever. Maybe you're subbing out, either letting Julius Randle walk at some point or trading him out in a package for another star. You're basically doing what a lot of teams are doing right now, which is if you don't have the guy, like the number, a true number one, a top 5, top 10 type player, then you're waiting for your chance to get one, right? You're waiting for the next discontented star to ask for a trade or demand a trade. And if you're the Knicks, you're armed with a lot of good depth and guys who are, at least for the moment, on very reasonable movable contracts. You have a surplus of draft picks. They're in position to do this. So, and in the meantime, you're getting a lot of great play and a lot of fun entertainment value and high competition from a group that is I would still say overachieving. And eventually you're not overachieving, right? You do this time, next season. Now the expectations are to at least at a minimum replicate this. Yeah. And so now, so like that, it's fine for the moment. Okay. What's next? Do they have an opportunity this summer to add somebody at the highest, tier? We'll see. Those are hard things to predict.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think the name, just in terms of a type of player I've thrown out, is someone in a Paul George mold. And to some extent, no duh, right? There's 7 to 12 to 15 of those guys on planet Earth. And that was always my issue with them going all in on Mitchell, is that there was, again, unless you have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, it's hard to play two really small, defensively deficient guards together. But you get that big two-way wing that can shoot. Things change a little bit. Who knows? Maybe we'll see what RJ Barrett is.
Paul George. Who knows? Paul George might just be available if the Clippers crash and burn and they give up on the whole Kawhi Paul George. I'm not suggesting that's about to happen. I'm just saying, those are the things you can't anticipate in this league. So You put yourself in a position, and the Knicks, to their credit, have to be opportunistic, to be good in the moment with room to improve. If it's not necessarily by any of your current players leaping up to becoming perennial All-NBA guys, at least we have the tools, the assets to go get that guy if one becomes available. I don't want to, overstate this possibility or send shudders down the spines of some Knicks fans, but the Karl Anthony Towns possibility is out there, right? I know you're already gritting your teeth. Yeah. 3 months ago, when the Knicks were still hovering around 500 mid-season, and I thought, this is who they're going to be. They're going to be a play-in team, probably losing the first round, and that's where that looked like their trajectory. And the Timberwolves were having all these issues, and Cat was out again. And I thought, CAA guy, Leon Rose guy, this is destiny, right? The Knicks are going to go trade for Cat. It still might happen, by the way, for all I know. But that was one that, and I think some people around the league kind of were keeping an eye on that too. But if you're looking at who's the next star to force his way out, it's Karl Anthony Towns, or maybe it's the Hawks souring on Trae Young. Maybe it's Dame Lillard finally asking out. Maybe it's the new Wizards GM, whoever it's going to be, convincing Ted Leonsis to finally trade Bradley Beal, who has a no-trade clause and can dictate where he goes or doesn't go. Somebody's going to become available this summer. Somebody always does. I'm not suggesting that one of those guys should be the target. I'm not suggesting all those guys even fit, especially now that Jalen Brunson is the Jalen Brunson that he's become. That's not a logical destination for Dame Lillard, or even if you liked Trae Young, that's not the logical fit either, I don't think. but there's always something, right? Like this in this league, hashtag this league, as my buddy Mark Stein would say.
Yeah.
Somebody will become available, and the Knicks are in a good position to go get somebody.
All right, that's good enough for me. Howard Beck, thanks for your time. But before I send you off, can you tell everyone where they can find all your awesome work?
Yeah, appreciate it. On Twitter at Howard Beck. I have an authory page, which is where all my writing goes. So especially right now, I'm freelancing for GQ Sports, but all my GQ stuff, my Sports Illustrated stuff, my New York Times stuff from back when I was a Knicks beat writer, all that is on my authory page. It's author with a Y at the end, / Howard Beck. And that link, I think, is also on my Twitter bio. And yeah, writing for GQ.com through the playoffs.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Howard. We'll have you on over the summer. We'll do 2-3 hours on Christmas. It'll be great. But until then, thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.